cloud was 30 miles away, but it felt as if it was on top of us.
Here was a truly historic scientific milestone, the world's first man-made thermonuclear reaction. But at 82 tons weight, what use was it?
Propaganda wrote the first hydrogen bomb was tested by United States in 1952. It's called Mike. It was not a bomb. It was construction like a big three-story house.
It was a bomb that you'd have to, as Robert Oppenheimer said, deliver by ox cart or by ship. Well, that wasn't very useful. You wanted one you could deliver by air.
The race was now to develop a thermonuclear device which would fit inside an aircraft. And despite their early lead, America seemed to be falling behind.
The threat of hydrogen bomb warfare is the greatest danger.
In 1953, the Soviets announced they'd developed the first practical H-bomb. Could the US do the same? Six months later, Los Alamos produced their answer to the Soviet bomb. Far more compact and based on the lightest metal that there is, lithium.
There are various versions of lithium, isotopes they're called. And the one that was needed for this weapon was lithium-6. It had 3 protons, 3 neutrons, lithium-6.
The fuel mixture, known as lithium deuteride, was packed inside this aluminium cylinder. Bikini was about to witness the most powerful explosion ever staged by the United States, codename Castle Bravo. But this time, things would go dramatically out of control.
They tested the bomb with liquid hydrogen, but they'd never tested one with lithium deuteride. And the measurements had been made wrong, as it turned out.
The scientists' miscalculation would have terrifying consequences. For some of their own team, for hundreds of Pacific Islanders, and for unsuspecting fishermen in the path of this massive explosion. Almost 60 years ago, John R. Haldeman was a young Marine corporal. Shipped out to the Pacific for this top-secret mission, he stood guard over America's superbomb.
It looked like a big propane tank, about 5 feet in diameter and 20 feet long. I wrote my name on it, being smart. Signed it. But we had to stay with that until it was all set up to go off. And you weren't allowed on there. If your name wasn't on the access list, you had orders to shoot to kill.
Bikini Atoll is a ring of small islands. Haldeman stood guard in the northwest corner, where Bravo would actually detonate. But it would be triggered from the island of Enu, 35 kilometers away. What happened next was documented in this once classified film.
Starting at H-minus 48 hours, all personnel at Bikini Atoll were evacuated. The only men to remain were the members of the firing party, protected in their bunker on Enu Island.
The bunker is located just beside the island's landing strip. It meant that if things went wrong, they could call in a helicopter for rescue. But the men inside here felt safe. Protected not just by reinforced concrete, but massive blast doors. Their job was to ensure that all monitoring devices were running, and finally, prime the firing circuit itself. If the scientists' calculations were correct, the lithium deuteride mixture would erupt with the force of 5 million tons of TNT.
Oh, good, I'm fine.
If it went much higher, the 35-kilometer margin of safety might not be enough. Their bunker was even made watertight, in case Bravo unleashed a tidal wave. As 0 hour approached, Marine John Haldeman was aboard the USS Curtis, the ship carrying top brass and scientists, as it had been for Operation Mike.
We were 23 miles from ground zero. And they're starting the countdown. And they got down to 10 seconds. Then you get kind of goose pimples and your hair stands up on the back of you. We had dark goggles on, but when it went off, you can see the bone in your arm. It's like looking at an x-ray. When we did turn around and take our goggles off, we all thought it'd be off in the distance. It was right on top of it. And you could see the shock wave coming, like a miniature tidal wave or tsunami. You're grabbing hold of lifelines and hanging on to gun mounts, and guys are sliding across the deck and you're grabbing them. And then it tilted back the other way, and I turned around to my buddy and I said, "Hey, I think we're goners." He said, "Yeah, I think you're right."
The scientists left behind on Bikini were even closer than Haldeman's ship. How could they survive this rogue superbomb? On March the 1st, 1954, on Bikini Atoll in the Pacific, America's most powerful hydrogen bomb test had gone out of control.
It was a terrifying moment. The explosion reached out so close to the blockhouses that they barely got out alive.
The leader of the firing party, Dr. John C. Clark, later recounted his experience. At 0 plus 20 seconds, a shock like a giant earthquake. At 0 plus 90 seconds, the air blast. So powerful that the concrete walls creaked. But it was their Geiger counters measuring radiation that spelled potential disaster. Bravo had created a vast plume of radioactive fallout, far bigger than expected and heading in a direction no one had predicted.
Fallout in a nuclear weapon is more a product of the material that's churned up by the explosion than it is of the explosion itself. The explosion is so hot that it just basically turns everything in the bomb into a gas. A bomb that's exploded on the ground stirs up the earth and irradiates the elements in those materials. And then that material is intensely radioactive. And its radioactivity is what typically we call fallout.
At the bunker, radiation levels were heading towards a lethal level. Clark knew that a helicopter would soon be on the way, but the men still had to get to the landing pad. The helicopter blades would kick up fallout which had already settled, increasing the danger still further, since the men hadn't been issued with protective clothing.
Get the bed sheets. Get that one, get that one, get this one. I'm taking one on the bottom.
And so they devised a primitive solution. These men, who'd just set off the most potent weapon at that time in history, would shield themselves from its deadly effects with bed sheets. as they hurried towards the waiting chopper. The USS Curtis, 37 kilometers from Ground Zero, was now also in harm's way.
We were the closest ship to the blast. And that radioactive dust, it's like snow. They just ordered us below deck, and we went below deck and buttoned up. They came around with Geiger counters, and the Geiger counter would sing when they bring it around your body. I must have been down there 10 days. It stunk down there. It got really ripe. And if anybody went out of the hatches, you had orders to shoot them.
So what had gone wrong? Although the principle of the hydrogen bomb had been proved with Operation Mike, each new weapon was pushing science to the limits. Dr. Martin Kalinowski, a nuclear physicist at the University of Hamburg, was asked to examine the declassified data from Castle Bravo.
At that time, much of the nuclear testing was trial and error. And the test was their experiment to find out new information. And one particular information that is very important for nuclear physicists or bomb physicists are the so-called cross-sections, the capabilities of nuclear materials to react. Lithium consists of two different kinds of nuclei, lithium-6 and what is called lithium-7. 7 indicates that there is one more neutron in the nucleus. Physicists at that time thought that lithium-7 is kind of inert, it doesn't contribute in any way to the nuclear explosion.
You have to realize this, we were pretty ignorant in those days about cross-sections, and this wasn't thought of at all. We were ignorant of the fact, but we should not have been ignorant.
I looked at the cross-sections for lithium-6 and lithium-7, and the comparison reveals lithium-7 does have a high cross-section. That means a high probability of undergoing a nuclear reaction.
This particular fuel in this bomb was 30% lithium-6, 70% lithium-7. What the scientists were not aware of was that lithium-7 would be stripped of one of its neutrons early in this reaction as it blew and turn into lithium-6, at which point it would become bomb fuel. The weapon was designed to have a yield of 5 megatons. But because of this unknown reaction in lithium-7, it had a yield of 15 million tons of TNT equivalent.
The power unleashed by Bravo is still evident today. 3 small islands at Ground Zero were simply vaporized, leaving a crater more than 1 kilometer wide and 60 meters deep. And there were terrible human consequences too. This fishing boat, named Lucky Dragon, preserved in a Tokyo museum, bears witness to the killing power of the bomb. As dawn rose, the ship, with a crew of 23, was sailing 132 kilometers east of Bikini.
This white powder, like snow, began to fall from the sky. It was like a blizzard of fine snowflakes. But I thought, this is the Pacific. How can it be snowing? It fell on my head and face, and I licked some. It didn't melt like snow would have done. It was like eating sand.